The crucifixion scene in The Exorcist. What if I told you there was much more to it than you know? What's going on, everyone? Julian here at Off the Dome, and boy, do I got a good one for you today. So today's discussion is going to be about The Exorcist, in particular the crucifixion scene, and actually not really the scene itself, but mostly what led up to the scene, and also about the crucifix itself. Now, the first thing I want to say is a lot of the conversation I'm going to have here, it's kind of bleeding into the novel a little bit. So there's a little bit of back and forth with the novel, but if you go back to the novel, it gives certain scenes a lot more context that just weren't put in the film. So with all that said, let's get into it. So we're going to start off here where Chris is coming back from the hospital with Regan, and you can see Karl is now carrying Regan into the house. This is kind of an important part of the film that a lot of people kind of miss. So here we have Detective Kinderman. He's ready to talk to Chris and go to the house, but he confronts these enormous steps where Burke Dennings was killed. Simultaneously, Chris is looking at her daughter Regan and noticing the bruise on Regan's face. And what does she do? She discovers that there's a crucifix right there under Regan's pillow. Simultaneously, Kinderman notices something on the floor. Now, contrary to what I see a lot of reactors say, and a lot of people are confused, this is not the demon artifact that Marin was looking at in the beginning of the film. A lot of people seem to think that this is the demon head that Marin discovered early on in the film. It is not that. It is just a piece of clay that obviously Regan would sculpt her little animals on, and you'll see that kind of showed off later on into the scene. So here we have Chris now questioning her staff about
Karl,
the crucifix.
did you put this in Regan's bedroom?
She's going to be well.
Karl, if you put this in Regan's bedroom, I want you to tell me. Now, did you?
Not me. I didn't.
Karl completely denies it. Now, in the novel, this isn't just Chris asking about the crucifix. There was also a witchcraft book that she discovered on her shelf. Now, she knew about it because it was given to her by a character in the novel. Her name was Mary Jo Perrin. She's also in the movie, but she has no speaking lines in the movie. She's just sort of a background figure at Chris's party. And that's very early in the film. In the book, she has a more prominent role in the sense where she gives Chris the book, and there's a discussion about witchcraft, and she's this elegant spiritual type. But anyway, I'm not going to get really heavy into that. But Chris did question about the book as well as the crucifix. So the reason why this part is so significant, it's because Chris was just at the doctor's office, and the doctors basically told her, we've exhausted every possibility. We've taken every avenue, and we still can't figure out what's going on with your daughter. So then they asked her if she had any religious beliefs. Did Regan have any religious beliefs? And Chris, of course, said no. But they suggested maybe an exorcism, not because they believe it would work for religious reasons, but they thought of it more as a shock therapy treatment. Now, Chris tells them, hey, I don't have any religious beliefs. I'm not taking my daughter to a witch doctor. And that's what you kind of see in the film. Then when she gets home and she realizes that there is some influence in the house, when she noticed that the book was on the bookshelf, and she was thinking, wait a minute, maybe this is what the answer is. Maybe there's nothing wrong with my daughter physically. Maybe this might work. This could be a possibility that maybe she just believes that she's possessed. So this is where Chris is starting to kind of be a little bit interested, but the movie doesn't show you anything with the book. The movie only shows you the crucifix, which also is important. So Chris comes down with the crucifix. She's asking Karl, and then she asks some of the other staffers, including Sharon and Willie. Now, I love this because I walk those stairs, and those stairs are a bitch. So I love Kinderman's face. I don't know how much acting there was in that, because those stairs are quite steep.
This was under Regan's pillow. Did you put it there?
Of course I didn't.
I didn't put it. Excuse me, madam.
What?
I meant to see you.
What man?
So what's not so obvious if you're just watching the movie for the first time is that Chris places the crucifix on that end table. This is after, of course, she's having a conversation trying to figure out the origins of where this thing came from and who put it on Regan's pillow. This is a key component to this breakdown. So here's Chris. She's coming back from the hospital and she's clearly frustrated, right? It must feel like the doctors are milking her for all her money. And of course, the movie never says that, but they just have no answers for her. And after all of the different tests and all of the treatments that they've given Regan, it doesn't seem like they have anything. So what do? They suggest that maybe she should have an exorcism. Why? Because maybe your daughter, Regan, has had some sort of influence, and maybe she thinks that she's possessed by a demon, and maybe that's why she's acting this way. So they have no idea. So then she goes upstairs and she discovers a crucifix under Regan's pillow. So on top of the witchcraft book that I just spoke about a little bit earlier, and now finding the cross, Chris is like, what the hell is going on here? Can't get no answers from the doctors. My staff, somebody must have put the crucifix under the bed. It just didn't appear there. And in the book, she really, hones in on it. And now a detective, homicide detective, is now knocking on her door. So you can see she's starting to put the pieces together, right? Burke Dennings was murdered. He didn't fall. It wasn't an accident from the stairs. And Chris, by this point, starts to put it together and realizes that her daughter, her possessed daughter, murdered Burke Dennings. So imagine the pressure, imagine the fear and the anxiety that she's going through. So a lot of people, when they watch this scene, they're not really, watch so many reactions, and it baffles me how people aren't, riding this wave with Chris. Now, I'm not going to show you the whole scene, but I'm going to show you a couple of little clips of it where Kinderman is kind of questioning her. And you can see on Ellen Burstyn's face, that's the actress who plays Chris MacNeil, stellar acting. And you can see she's playing it several ways. The first way she's playing it is, I don't know what's going on. I'm a concerned mom. My daughter's sick, blah, blah, blah. But also, you can see that she's terrified and she's trying to hold it in. Meanwhile, she's not stupid. She realizes that Detective Kinderman is kind of buttering her up a little bit. He's kind of being a little sweet, a little goofy, but he's definitely paying attention. And the novel goes into this way deeper because he suspects Karl, and Karl has a whole backstory that they don't show in this film, but there's some remnants of that in the scene. So let's check it out.
Might your daughter remember, perhaps, if Mr. Dennings was in her room that night?
Why do you ask?
Oh, might she remember?
No. No, she was heavily sedated.
It's serious.
Yes, I'm afraid it is.
May I ask?
We still don't know.
Watch out for drafts. A draft in the fall when the house is hot is a magic carpet for bacteria.
So now Karl comes in, and of course, this is a bit different in the book, but pretty much you're not missing anything as far as the questioning. There's some questioning with Karl, questioning with Sharon, a couple of instances where Kinderman is having a conversation. But in this particular one, again, like I said, remnants of what you see in the novel or what you read in the novel. You can see right here, Karl comes in, and then some of Kinderman's questions to Chris afterwards may slightly suggest that he's kind of suspicious of Karl.
Excuse me, madam. Anything else?
No, Karl, we're fine, thank you. It's all right, Karl.
Karl looks suspicious as hell, but, you know, it is what it is. Now, Kinderman starts to describe what happened to Burke Dennings. Now, I don't think Kinderman fully knew the relationship between Chris and Burke. Burke wasn't just the director of the film that she was recording in Washington, but Burke was also her love interest or someone that she was dating or seeing. They didn't suggest that anything was too serious, but obviously there was something there. And early on in the film, you see Burke leaving her house and he's drunk. He's inebriated. He embarrassed himself in the party and he went after Karl. So it would make sense that if anyone killed Burke, it would be Karl. So now Kinderman is starting to question all of that. And you can see that Chris immediately knows that it's her daughter. So even though Karl looks suspicious, Chris knows that it's not Karl. But Kinderman is trying to find out what's going on. And essentially what ended up happening was nobody was home except for Sharon and Regan. And Sharon left to go get Regan's medication. And Burke happened to show up as Sharon was, considering leaving. So when Burke showed up, Sharon said, "Hey, stay here, watch Regan. I'm going to go pick up the medicine." And that's what she does. When she gets back, Chris is already home. Chris comes home, and they showed us in the film, and she notices that Regan's window is wide open, and she closes the window, and she goes downstairs, and she's yelling at Sharon, why the hell did you leave Regan all alone? Sharon explains to her, Burke was here. And then somebody knocks on the door and says, "Hey, we just found Burke dead outside. He fell down the stairs, broke his neck." So now Kinderman, instead of this just being an accident, because everyone thinks maybe Burke was drinking and he fell down the stairs and it was just an accident. But what Kinderman knows, nobody else knows. And he starts to reveal it here. And he also reveals it to Karis, in another part of the film, earlier in the film, when he tells Karis that Burke was found at the bottom of the steps with his head turned completely around. So that's an extra detail that Chris isn't sure of. But as soon as Kinderman sort of suggests it to her, then you can see Chris realizes what happens, and you can see the horror on her face.
Why are you asking all this?
It's strange. The deceased comes to visit, stays only 20 minutes, and leaves all alone a very sick girl. And speaking plainly, Mrs. MacNeil, it isn't likely he would fall from a window. Besides, a fall wouldn't do to his neck what we found, except maybe one chance in 1,000. Now, my hunch, my opinion, he was killed by a very powerful man, point one. And the fracturing of his skull, point two, plus the various other things we mentioned, would make it very probable, not certain, that the deceased was killed and then pushed from your daughter's window. But nobody was in the room except your daughter, so how can this be?
Right there, you see, this is great filmmaking, right? So you see, Friedkin, the director, knew exactly how to frame that, right? He put it on Chris's face, and they were zooming in slightly, and you can see that she's working in her head, wait a minute, Burke didn't fall down the stairs. He was murdered. And Kinderman already knows that it must have been that, because what did he find? He found that clay figure at the bottom of the steps. So at this point now, he doesn't know what that clay figure is, but he discovers it in just a few seconds. Let's look.
Would you like some more coffee?
Please.
She did not want to get him more coffee. You can see the look on her face. She's like, shit. But here, pay attention to this. Like, you can see she's trying to hold it together and not shake too much. So now he walks to the window, and what does he see?
It's cute. Your daughter, she's the artist? Thank you. Incidentally, you might ask your daughter if she remembers seeing Mr. Dennings in her room that night.
Look, he wouldn't have any reason in the world to go up to her room.
Oh, I know, I realize, but if certain British doctors never asked, what is this fungus, we wouldn't today have penicillin, correct?
Well, when she's better, I'll ask her.
Yeah, couldn't hurt.
Okay, this scene is coming to the end. This conversation is coming to the end. There's a nice little moment here where Kinderman sort of tries to loosen her guard a little bit, and he asks for an autograph. He expresses to her that he's a huge movie fan and that he's seen her movie a bunch of times. And throughout the film, that's what you see him talking about, is his love for films. That's his connection to people, right? So his connection to Karras, later his connection to Father Dyer, his connection to Chris MacNeil, right? Kinderman loves movies, kind of like I do. But anyway, that's his way of kind of loosening her guard. She gives him the autograph, and there's a little bit more to it in the novel. I'm not going to get into that right now. But as they're leaving, you're going to notice as Kinderman is leaving, and they don't hone in on it, the crucifix is no longer on that table.
You're a very nice lady. Thank you.
You're a nice man.
I'll come back
Ross is
when
gone.
she's feeling better. Bye.
Bye.
So you can see Chris is freaking out. He knows what's going on. And if you're really focused in on the film while you're watching it for the first time, you're going on that ride with her. And there you go. You see no crucifixes on that table. Now, we all know what's going to happen here. This is the crucifixion scene, one of the craziest scenes ever put on film. But a lot of people don't realize, who watch the film for the first time, there's more to it than that. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is, how did the crucifix that was on that table when Kinderman came in, how did it end up back upstairs? A lot of people are going to think that it was Karl, right? Maybe Karl grabbed it and put it upstairs. And that's what you would think if you read the novel, especially because when you start hearing the tussling in the novel, it's Karl and the demon, going at it. And then she knocks out Karl, and Karl's laying on the floor. When Chris comes up, she'll see Karl knocked out with blood on his head. Here's the image of that. They never filmed it, but this is the image. So obviously, maybe they did film it, and it's just, not something that, they've ever put out there. But for all I know, this originally was supposed to take place in the film, but they never showed it. You don't hear Karl right now. You just hear the rattling and the noises and the screams. And so the film itself doesn't suggest that Karl was the one that did it. The novel does, but not the film. So you can speculate that in the film version, did Regan come down and grab the crucifix? From what I remember in the novel too, they don't specifically say Karl grabbed the crucifix and went back upstairs. So that's kind of left up to interpretation, and partly because they did suggest in the novel that Regan was the one that did the desecration at the church, right? That statue had clay and paint on it, and Regan has access to clay and paint. And she also took the cross, and there was a lot more to it than that. So it's apparent that potentially Regan came down while Chris was talking to Kinderman, grabbed the crucifix, and then Karl had to tussle with her, got knocked out or whatever. But again, they don't show Karl, but he is in the scene. Let's look.
Fuck you! Fuck Jesus! Fuck you! Liam, fuck you!
So if you look there on the bottom left-hand side, that's Karl. I believe that's his foot and his hand. I believe you can see it. I don't know if I'm blocking that, but he's there. I'm not exactly sure why they didn't include that in the film, right? I think it would have been more interesting to see that happen, but I think maybe for pacing, I don't know what the reason why it was cut out, but you can clearly see that Karl is lying there if you're paying attention. Most people, I went a good 20 years of watching this film over and over again, and I never noticed it. So that is really interesting. But I remember when I read the book, revisited the book, I'm thinking, I wonder why they didn't put that in there. And then I saw this, and then I went online, and of course other people noticed it as well. So it is kind of amazing to see this. It's just one small tidbit, but it makes you wonder, how did she get the cross? Did Karl try to come upstairs and put it under her pillow? Or did Regan grab it and then somehow Karl ended up in the room and that's where everything went to hell? We'll never know. But it is an interesting part. I'm going to also address quickly one thing that a lot of people are confused about. When you hear the demon originally screaming when Chris is downstairs, that's the voice of Burke Dennings. I hear a lot of people say, oh my God, the demon got a British accent. Well, the only Brit that was in the freaking film was Burke Dennings. And he was killed. His head was found at the bottom of the stairs, turned around, and he was murdered by Regan. And Chris, you can see, is freaking out over it. And she's having a conversation with Kinderman. Kinderman is literally telling her that someone killed Burke and threw him out of her daughter's window. But the only person in the room was her daughter. So what does that mean? So I'm going to say this. This is going to be a little controversial statement, but I do feel like although there wasn't anything ever strongly suggesting that there was any kind of molestation, there's some hints at it, because what you hear the demon saying, and excuse my language, but you hear the demon, or you hear Burke's voice, in the demon in Burke's voice telling Regan to do it, to let Jesus fuck you. Right? So I don't know if that was a suggestion that maybe Burke went up there to, touch Regan or do something improper. I don't know. I don't know that 100% sure. But what I do know is there was a deliberate reason why they had Burke saying that to Regan, and not just a demonic voice. It was clearly Burke's voice telling her to do it. So just a thought, just a theory. I'm not sure. What do you guys think? But also, when Regan turns her head around, what does she say? She says it in Burke's voice. Do you know what she did? Your cunting daughter. So a lot of people get confused over that and don't realize that that's Burke Dennings' voice. And the demon was mocking the whole situation, letting Chris know, guess what? Your daughter did this. And she knows that her mother's in fear that maybe the detective is going to find out. And also, that was her love interest. So it's horrifying when you see it. And then the head spinning thing. I know a lot of people also confused over it. That's not really what happened. Regan's head didn't go 180. That's what the demon made Chris see. It's like a hallucination that the demon had done to her and Karis at the end of the exorcism. So a lot of people take it literally, and the film presented it literally, but it was more like a, what the hell am I seeing type of moment, along with hearing Burke's voice. So just wanted to kind of add that here, and I'll show you right now.
Do you know what she did? Your canting daughter?
So that is my breakdown of the crucifixion scene and everything that kind of led up to it and all the surroundings of it. I hope you enjoyed that. I really want to know what you guys think about the scene, and if you have any other things to add. I know I just recently dropped my Shining video, and I had so many great comments and so many people giving their own theories, and some people even added to to the scene that I wasn't really aware of. So if you haven't seen it, check it out, especially if you're a fan of The Shining. But back to this film, what a great scene, what a great part of the film. You got to understand that because Chris MacNeil was an atheist and didn't have any religious beliefs, what would push her, what would prompt her to even consider getting a priest, right? She's a woman of modern times, and she doesn't believe in any of that. But guess what? Now things are starting to fall into place where she's in a desperate situation. So with everything building up, Chris finally decides, okay, I definitely need to get an exorcism, right? Like I need to get a priest. But I've noticed a lot of reaction videos and a lot of people immediately, they hear a noise, they see the Ouija board, she starts acting funny. And the first thought is, why don't they get an exorcist? Why don't they get a priest? It's clearly obvious, right? Because short attention spans and people not really following storytelling. But just consider this for a moment, especially if you're one of those people. In 1973, when this film came out, demonic possession wasn't pop culture. It wasn't something that you saw in movies. So for anyone in modern times to jump to that conclusion and look at the film and say, well, isn't that the obvious answer? No. This was a unique story in 1973. Nobody in 1973 would have immediately assumed demonic possession in the secular world that Chris was living in at that time. It would probably be even a stretch to this day. But, we think that way because of films and because of all the pop culture references that this movie started. So any demonic possession movie you've seen in your lifetime likely was influenced by this. But if you go back and you watch this film now, a lot of people think, oh, it's so illogical that they didn't get a priest to begin with. It's not how that would work. So that's something also for a lot of you guys to consider. And I'm only plainly speaking to people who are not totally familiar with the film. For the fanatics like me, the crazy people who've watched The Exorcist a bunch of times, read the novel, you know what I'm talking about. You understand it fully. I'm going to make a claim. I'm not going to make the same claim I made at The Shining because some people kind of lost their minds, but I've put hundreds of hours, maybe even thousands of hours into this film. I've watched it countless of times. I've done film studies. This is the film study that I do the most. I even went to the Tampa Theater, which is, rumored to be haunted. And I kind of had a little haunting experience in there. Maybe I'll share that with you guys one day. But I went to see a screening with Linda Blair to see The Exorcist. So that was a great experience to actually, see her on stage and hear her talking about the film and some of her experiences. I did that a couple of years ago. It was a great experience. Anyway, with all of that said, thank you so much for joining me in this video. I had a great time presenting it, and I hope you learned something new. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's totally free. Maybe it costs you just a couple of seconds of your time, but it really goes a long way, and I do appreciate it. Comments are more than welcome for this video. Definitely want to know what you guys think. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Peace.